or whatever they're called. Did not
He's not even. He's not gonna make it.
He's gone. He's gone. He's gone. Moments before
I
we
take
started
fun
this
trips to
recording.
Wales and goes crazy.
Yeah, Josh is sick. Welcome to Plat Overwatch. Special episode. We're not using a numbered system for this one. Look at him, he's dying. Hold it in, hold it in.
I've had a cough recently.
Yeah,
I'm sorry about that.
A little bit sick. Not COVID because you got tested.
And that's what you get when you go out there licking toilet seats.
Never done that. Don't know why you'd accuse me of that.
You haven't done it. You haven't licked any toilet seats
For TikTok. He does it for TikTok challenges.
like a loo licky. Don't they call it that
This
over
is a
there?
serious
Loo
episode.
licking.
This is a serious
What?
episode, and you started it with toilet licking.
Oh my goodness. Well, everybody's also sick as well. Jonathan's also sick. That's why he's not on this special episode that we're doing as well. So if you could all write a comment saying "Get well soon, Mr. Larson!" ! I'd appreciate that. And
He's too hungover to show up.
yeah, I don't think that's the case. But I will explain the episode of what we're doing as well, because it's a special one. It's a little bit different to what we're usually doing. But as it's the end of Overwatch 1 as an era, as a game, we have decided to go back. And separately, all of us, we're going to do this for essentially every single category and role, but starting with the roles of like DPS, main support, flex support, main tank, off tank. We're going to rate our top 10 players of all time of Overwatch 1 history. All the way back since the very beginning of Overwatch's release in Esports, our top 10 players, and today's episode is going to be focused around the main supports. And so how we've done this, I'm going to be honest with you, we've all done it differently, I think, but we haven't communicated at all how we've ranked any of these players. We've put together our top 15 players, our top 15 main supports. Kurt has used a highly advanced algorithm to sort the top 10 players and combine
He built an AI
list.
to process this.
Yeah, he's used a very advanced algorithm to combine our lists into one top 10 list, which is all of us here, including Johnny's, top 15 players. And the reason we did top 15, we're only showing the top 5, is because we use
Top 10.
Yes,
You're
the
only
reason
showing the
we're only
top
showing the
five.
top
I mean,
10
this is
instead
a
of the top
20-minute
15, sorry,
episode.
is because those 5 players that are left off is what I meant to say. At the end, they get essentially turned into this blender point system, and they get added on to break tiebreakers. It's a very complicated system, but it all works in the end. And yeah, that is our plan. These are the episodes we've got coming out.
To begin, Bren, I am interested in hearing what people were thinking about when they're trying to judge this, because I found just a shout out as well to Yiska, who's been doing, he hasn't been doing a top 10 of all time, but he's been doing his idea of the best player from Overwatch 1. He called it like the greatest 6 or something. So he did an article where he picked what, in his opinion, the best main support of all time in Overwatch 1 was. And he said he found it to be very difficult. And also all of the comments, everybody has different criteria as to what they count as GOAT status. Do you have to be playing since 2016 when the game came out? Do you have to have been playing at the top level for many years? Is it about a peak? I think that kind of stuff is very interesting. And I like the fact that we didn't communicate beforehand, because it's going to blend a lot of different opinions on what makes somebody the GOAT into one.
Yeah, so we all went with different methods. Matt, what did you get started when you were ranking your top players? When you're looking back for the annals of time, just find your top 15 main support players. What was your marking criteria?
I had many criteria. Many criteria. It was
I
like,
hope so.
you know, what's a
You
base?
only had one. That would be problematic.
I'm just wondering if you have thought processes.
My main thought process was, fuck, I hope I don't forget anybody. That was my main thought during the entire time. I had a pretty clear idea. Main support was actually quite hard, I would say. As we went, like as you got past like 6 or 7, there are so many people who are pretty even, in which case you kind of had to judge like who had the highest career accolades, and then maybe like do those career accolades like outweigh maybe somebody who's like a little bit more skilled than the other. I would say I think this will actually probably be the hardest ranking we'll have to do as main support, because I think it's so outside of I think a few outliers. It's very difficult to separate yourself from the pack.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess in terms of like differentiating out the impact, it's hard. But when you look at like DPS or off tank or things like that. There's just so many really, really good players. Well, I think with main support, there's like it's just hard to figure out the impact of them necessarily relative to their team and the era they played and all the other things. So, but I mean, I think they're all going to be hard, but I don't think it's unfair to say that this might be the hardest. I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, it's all going to be fucking hard.
What about you, Josh?
I found this to be extraordinarily difficult once you got past like 7th.
Yeah.
I think that the top 4 pretty locked in my opinion. If anyone has different picks for the top 4, I'd be amazed. And
what did you guys have for top 4? I'm like, oh wait, hold on. Like,
anyway,
we'll see.
Then I think as you go down, it really does become hard because I tended to go for people who had peaks of good performance rather than years of mediocrity, because that doesn't really scream. Like, it doesn't engage with me just that you were average for year upon year upon year upon year. You've got to have done something. You've got to have achieved something, even if it was for only 1 year of your career. That to me was like a big thing. Also, fuck this bullshit about playing before Overwatch League, honestly. Like, if all of your accomplishments were pre-Owl, get off my list. Get off my list.
Really?
But it should be weighted still. I still think there should be some weight. If you're looking at a situation where maybe players are equivalent or roughly equivalent, and one player had a lot of success pre-Overwatch League, then I think that should still count something.
Personally, though, if your career didn't make it past Overwatch League, like if you died within the first year of Overwatch League, I already counted out your career because you have no staying power. Like, you didn't get there once the competition got tough. So I know that that's going to be a controversial point. Maybe not so much with main support, but definitely with some of our later ones as well, where people, have rosy memories about people who dominated Apex then just fell off a cliff in Owl. But to me, you've got to perform at least for some of the years of Owl.
I had the similar approach to all of you, but as well, I was taking into account things that none of you guys have mentioned. I was thinking about this. I mean, this. I was thinking about if they were innovators within their role, like in a period of time, if they were the ones pushing how a role was played further
Is
than
Showmeister number 1 on your list then? Because he got scroll wheel banned? Is Showmeister number 1? Is Showmeister number 1 on the list because he got scroll wheel banned?
Showmeister.
Is he number 1?
Yeah.
You got Lucio scroll wheel jumping banned. Actually, I think that's he refuted that rumor. He technically refuted that rumor, but I think it is funny.
What else did I have? And I also had, in terms of their impact on the wider scene, as being spokespeople, like kind of like grounded figures that people looked up to as main
What
supports.
in the Lord's name does that mean?
So you're saying PMA? If they were
for the
PMA,
no, not even PMA, but like if they were just like, when you thought of in that year, if you thought of main support, their name would come to mind in a lot of ways, because even if they weren't the most like mechanically skilled player in the world, they were charismatic and they knew how to, they were clearly important.
Jake.
Clearly important towards their team. Jake.
You've got Jake Mercy up there.
Jake's in my top 4.
No, he's not.
He's not.
Stop.
You are going to be
I'll be
very
on there,
surprised who almost made the top 10, but we could probably get started soon.
Let's get started with this. So we're going to show all of our lists at the very end. So we're going to see what all of us had. But to begin with, we're just going to start right at the very bottom. This is our aggregated list that Kurt has cooked up in the lab. The algorithm is at work. Number 10 of our
the
top...
bottom of this is going to be mental.
Number 10 of our top 10 main supports of all time of Overwatch 1 history. Kurt, feel it. Oh! I forgot.
Oh, you forgot.
You forgot IDK.
I forgot about IDK.
I actually had him at 13th as well, which is interesting because this showcases one of the things about aggregated top 10s is that as long as somebody gets mentioned quite a lot, they are going to have a higher aggregate score than where anybody put them. So, for example, we've got like 4 people who put them at 13th or something like that for IDK. Or not quite, it's 11th, 13th, 13th, and then off the list. But people that we've rated higher, other people have forgotten about. or not rated at all. Just thought they weren't that good. So IDK is big enough of a presence. He's kind of got that Brent factor that you were talking about. You know him. People talked about him. That he was, in some sense, interesting to discuss the way that he played. And so he had an impact in that sense because he's noticeable.
Yeah, I mean, I thought IDK was he definitely deserved to be like in the top 15. I don't know. I'm very curious of who you had in there that he didn't make it, but
You'll see at the end.
Yeah,
Like,
I'm interested to see what that would be too.
I thought he was pretty impactful when he was in the league. He was a very aggressive Lucio player. I think and that's kind of really like his like biggest peak though, right? Is like the season with Hangzhou.
I mean, 2019 was his best year by far, and I think that's where his name was in it the most. For me at least, I think he was really, like you said, Matt, very aggressive. His mechanics on Lucio, I think, were pretty strong. But I didn't really love his playstyle ever, and I think he was kind of like Liu Gong in that it was high risk, high reward. But the difference is he never seemed to be his mechanics / game sense were never high enough to make the playstyle work nearly as much. So a lot of times he kind of fed. So I think for me, that's why he lost points. But overall, he was a really, really aggressive, like playmaking type of player.
Brent, can you lower your TV? Are you deaf?
Yeah, I can. I mean, it's not.
Yeah,
I
I'm
didn't
hearing
turn
it
up.
pretty. I'm hearing it pretty heavily too. Yeah.
I also I had IDK on my list, but like I said, I had him at 13th. The reason I didn't have him higher is because I've already said this piece in one of the previous Plat chats. I feel like he had the right idea with Lucio about trying to make it high impact, go for kills, like play aggressively. But he just didn't quite have the same talent as some of the people who are going to be higher up on the list who did that play style really, really well.
I think he had the talent. I don't think he had the longevity. I don't think he had like the.
Well, I was going to say, actually,
career.
one of the markers for IDK being on the list, and one of the reasons I quite like him being at the 10th position here, is because he does have longevity that extends before Overwatch League and through Overwatch League as well. This guy was on my radar in 2017 when he was playing for a Freak of Freaks Blue, and he was playing with like with Mano, with Arhan, and like that team was really innovative. They had Tyrong as coach, and they were a really cool team to watch pre-Owl. And he was one of those players that's actually passed the test of time. And yeah, he didn't ever break into like incredible elite status apart from that 1 year where he got picked for the World Cup and stuff as well. But he was on people's radars as a guy that had potential even way back.
Yeah.
Did Hangzhou win anything in 2019?
In 2019, I believe they went to like let me check on this real quick. No, title wise, I don't believe they won anything.
No, 2019 is the year of the Shock Vancouver rivalry.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Did they even come close to any of them?
I believe they finished. No. I don't think they. I think they finished overall regular season.
They finished the overall season in 2019 very high. I remember that, but
they finished top 4 because they had a really good. They had like very strong stage 3 and 4, I believe.
Yeah, it's like I remember it pretty. 2019 is pretty vivid in my head. I quite like that season. Yeah, Spark at some points were looking like solidly the 3rd best team. They're not at the beginning of the season, but towards the end they looked like the 3rd best team. But they still were
was like what? It was like Shock Titans, Hangzhou, New York, and like the Gladiators. I think
flavor of the month.
I definitely didn't have it on my list as well because when I'm thinking about the GOATS era 2019, I'm thinking about way different candidates. I mean, 2 candidates which you can already pick in your brain, but that's part of the reason. And I was considering some weird elements.
You must have had some wacky choices for his name not to cross your list at all.
Anyway, IDK made mine, and I tried to sneak 16 players into my.
I have nothing more to discuss on this one. Let's bring up the next player, number 9 of our top 10.
Yo, okay. I had him a bit higher.
Same. Wow.
I had him, not much higher, but I had him higher.
Yeah, I also had him a bit higher as well, but not much higher either.
I think this guy. Okay, so to talk about the stuff that he does incredibly well, he's got some of the best movement in the entire game on Lucio. Yeah. I mean, there are other pro Lucios who are trying to learn from FD God because he's that much better when he came in on his rookie season in 2020, and he was bossing people around this year. I think in terms of things that are bad about FD God's attempt at winning like a GOAT competition, hasn't been around for very long. So never going to actually win a title like this. But also, just got bad rap all this year playing for the Shock.
Yeah. I think him being this low is probably a bit of like just kind of looking at like just his recent performances, right? And like kind of the community narrative overall that's kind of gone.
Well, I was the biggest FD God defender of 2021, and I don't think I had him on my list.
You didn't have him on your list.
What do you mean you don't?
Who is on
have
my
IDK or FD God? Who do you got up here? What is going on?
You just pick like streamers, just community figures.
Well,
like,
I was thinking,
you know.
When I was thinking about this list, I'm thinking of all time. I'm thinking categorizing the history of Overwatch 1 into legacies, into periods of time where people were performing incredibly well, and looking at their, you know, how much they were winning, if they actually won anything notable, if what era they were playing in, whether the competition was, you know, higher at this point, lower at this point. I was weighing it differently in my brain like that. I'll agree with you guys. I may have fucked up my list.
I was worried about my list, but I feel fucking great about my list now.
It's only 20% of the vote as well, so it's not like Brent's done major damage here,
right?
But we don't know how Reinforce voted at all, so it's possible that Reinforce also went absolute maniac kind of voting. But I can see where you're coming from, because FD God really hasn't been around for that long. No. He played 2 seasons, and he was incredible in his rookie season, and he was good in his second as well. Much maligned, but still good. And, you know, he's playing in the most competitive era of the game. So that's where I give him credit and think he deserves to be on the list.
Oh, and I think you can tell with his mechanical skill.
For a guy who only played 2 years.
Yeah. You can tell with his, like, movement and his just mechanical skill, like, he is definitely ahead of... I mean, look at the way he plays Lucio versus some of the players who, you know, in the early ages of Overwatch did, and it's, like, laughable to go back and look at some of that footage. Like, he is just on another level.
I think if you had this list of only Lucio players, he could have potentially made an argument to crack like top 5, or even, if depending how big of a simp you are, top 3 in terms of like Lucio only list. If you really loved FD God, you could theoretically make that argument. But when you take into context his whole history and also his other heroes, which I actually think his Mercy was pretty good, is pretty decent. It's just like his Brigida that he lost points for, most noticeably. And I think also adjusting to some of the other more recent play styles, he struggled a bit, but he was really good still. And his mechanics on Lucio are extremely top tier. It's just, to me, he lost points for some of his hero flexibility and I think adaptation in certain metas, I think.
Yeah. Man, I cannot wait to see the list at the end of this. I mean, this is ridiculous. Let's roll number 8. Let's see what we got here in the aggregated list.
Okay, that's a little bit lower than
higher, but I didn't. I now don't feel great about that.
I had him higher too.
Oh, okay.
This is about where I put him. Actually, I think Jexa.
He wasn't on Brent's list.
No, he was. Jexa was on my list, but this is around where I had Jexa tied of a lot of players, and I was struggling to place his actual, like, where did I want him in the list. And I ended up going with lower, because I pinned him as this is in my comment. I remember writing this. I said, I think of Jexa as a bit of a chemistry player. I just made up that term. He's a kind of player where you get the best out of him when he's playing with a team that he's most comfortable with. And it was when we saw this guy playing on the Fuel, and he's playing with teammates that he's played with in the past, and he's comfortable. He didn't reinvent. He didn't push the limits of the hero that he was playing on Lucio, but he kind of played within his role. He knew the ins and outs of his team at a time, and you really saw the best out of him there.
I had him higher just because I thought, you know, he's obviously been a pro player for a very long time, but then I also thought that the way that he performed with the Dallas Fuel this season, at least for me, carried a lot of weight, because I thought this was one of the more competitive seasons in Owl we've ever had. And to play that well, I think I kind of elevated him from this spot.
The reason that I mean, I think he's pretty fairly rated here personally,
Yeah.
but I definitely think he played his best most recently, right?
Mhm.
I think he's a really good all-round player as well. Some of the players that we've talked about so far, and some that we'll mention later on, primarily it's Lucio. That's what we're going to be talking about. Or for some of them, you know, the odd example, it'll be that they had an incredible brig, and it really made the difference. But Jex has got the flexibility to play any of the heroes that you want from him. Is he going to be on anybody's list of like the greatest X hero? Like, did he have the best peak performance on Lucio, on Brig, on Mercy? I don't think so. But I think what's excellent about him is that he was able to play to a top level, not just on this team, but he actually played pretty well when he was even on like the scrappier squad of the Houston Outlaws when he was playing in 2020. Like, he still had pretty decent moments when he was playing Lucio and playing Brig on that team, even though the team was an absolute disaster last year, or not last year, the year before that.
2019
But-
or 2019 or 2020, I should say.
And I would have had Jexa higher on my list had he been able to demonstrate the potential that we saw from him in Contenders earlier in his Owl career. Sorry. So he played for like when he got signed to Owl, when he came out of Element Mystic, there was a lot of hype around this guy. There was a lot of talk. He was pretty fluently bilingual, Korean and English, so he was a pretty hot pickup. He was IGLing. The guy's like a hot commodity, and the first 2 years were kind of limp.
There he goes again. There he goes.
Is Josh still echoing in my mic?
Yes.
I mean, it's echoing pretty. He is echoing a bit. He's not. We're not echoing.
I've got it
nearly
down
as
so
much.
low on the volume.
But I think it's getting there. I do think that for Jexa, I had Jexa a bit higher, so a couple spots higher, because I do agree with the points that he's not going to be the best on any hero, and also comparatively to his Element Mystic performance going into Overwatch League, especially on Dynasty, his first year on the Dynasty, he looked pretty underwhelming. But I gave him extra points for 2 reasons. One, he looked good on a bad team, which is extremely hard to do as a main support player. Very hard to do that. And 2, he is also extremely well-rounded and consistent at both hero pool wise and his overall performance game to game. And that, to me, one of my big criteria for like determining how high I place a player at times is like just how consistent they are, because consistency is like it is the philosopher's stones of esports. Like, if you get a guy that's always going to play like at his level, at a very good level at every game, that's like a diamond in the rough, because so many of the best players have games where they just drop off a cliff. While Jexa, I don't think ever had like a really terrible streak of performances. He was like always solid and well-rounded, which to me puts him way up on the list, considering his overall performance was always really good on a variety of heroes. So that's why, to me, I think I put him up a little bit higher than this spot.
Yeah, no, I can't fault it. I mean, I had Jexa tied with a lot of people around this kind of portion, but I ended up knocking him lower just because of what I said earlier about the whole. I felt like you got the best out of him when he was playing with a really good team, which we saw coincidentally in the most recent year. But yeah, let's roll on number 7 of our top 10 main supports.
I had him higher.
I had him lower.
Oh.
Yeah, what the hell is this?
How was that?
What is this?
This is a really good clip.
What?
This like, I think this might have been
The
like
slime montage of Josh talking about
Yeah.
slime.
Yeah.
Can we roll that back again? I just want to see. What are you in the parents'
spot?
house?
That's this. Wait, that's this dresser right there.
Yeah,
Oh
it
my
is.
god.
That's really funny.
That's wild.
It's funny how much of your parents' house is baked into Overwatch League history.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny? Like, it's not even
It's
like anything
really
to do.
funny.
Like, your parents' house is essentially just it's something they're gonna like what they did to like George Washington's house or some historical figure, where they just preserve it and you can go visit it later.
We're kosher.
Saying, it's nice.
Yeah, the people who really liked Overwatch 1 go on pilgrimages to
Yeah.
Josh's parents' house.
Yo,
Now, I had Slime, even though you used my quote and my face in this clip, I actually had Slime in 10th. But
Oh, don't show mine. I had him way higher.
My quote bigged him up.
I had Slime
Listen,
high.
I thought he was elite when he played. I love this guy. I can't believe that he didn't get played more after the Vancouver Titans exploded and this runaway roster disappeared. I simply don't understand why he didn't get played more. But as it was, he didn't.
I had him higher.
He just didn't play very much.
Because this team was so talented and he was like just as a rookie, just so impressive. And then even things before Owl. And then I didn't really kind of hold the Titans just like screwing everybody and falling apart against him. I mean, I actually think probably with like a similarly caliber team, he can actually probably still play at like this high of level.
Yeah. I had him really high up because I put a ton of stock into the GOATS era in terms of just the development of the role that main support was. I felt like as bad as GOATS was to watch for an entire year, having it literally be the sole composition and the thing that people are pushing forwards and innovating in, like the changes that we saw and how teams played GOATS, very like the tiny micro stuff that's so nerdy that most people just don't care about that much. It brought some of the pinnacle of gameplay that we saw in Overwatch. Some of my favorite moments watching Overwatch came from 2019. And yeah, I think in terms of Lucio play, it was also a meta where Lucio play was crazy impactful in GOATS. Like a good Lucio player could honestly carry team fights in terms of how they positioned, when they decided to boop, how they booped, how they comboed with the rest of their team. Like they were incredibly impactful. So not only was it a meta that we saw kind of each role being honed to its very highest level. I say each role, DPS wasn't being played, but in terms of the tanks and the support play, it was being honed to a higher level. We also saw incredible moments coming out from individuals. So Slime was high up for that reason for me, because this guy, when he was on this team, he was up there as potentially the best main support at the time. I mean, you can make an argument, obviously, that that's not the case because of just the accomplishments and how 2019 played out, but for me, that's why I put Slime up particularly high.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's completely fair. In fact, when I look at my ranking a little bit more, I maybe was a little harsh on him and could have put him up a little bit more, but I still agree with around like the 10th spot for him, but maybe 10th to 9th, because it is undoubtable. It's essentially undoubtedly true that he was one of the best main support players in 2019. So he deserves a spot around this top 10. Just for being so good during that era, and also pre-Overwatch League on Runaway. But his 2020 performance, I actually wasn't as big on him. I still thought Toby was a better player. And on top of that, his most recent performance with Mayhem, he was pretty rough. And also, he never had, regardless of the overall performance on his like some of his more signature heroes like Lucio, he also never had a very deep hero pool, which hurts him in my eyes a bit. Not having a deep hero pool. And in addition, I think that he had a lot, in particular this past year, some very big lows in addition to like his previous highs, which also consistency does hurt. Like if you don't have some consistent performances from year to year. So he had a very standout performance.
Only in Overwatch do you get a frag movie with a back cap.
Yeah.
Where you're just staring at the limousine on Hollywood Second.
But yeah, I think he was really good though, and just because of his GOATS and runaway level performance, he deserves to be around like the top 10-ish around there.
Mm-hmm.
So,
all right, let's take a look at number 6 then in the top 10 main supports. I
like how every one of these quotes so far have been Johnny's.
Yeah,
I feel like I haven't had quotes at all.
Josh had one.
Jonathan's gone. I like to hear his thoughts. It's good to hear what he thought about these.
Where did you guys have Moss on your list?
Around here. I had him actually one spot lower. I had
to pull up my list. I can't remember.
See, I had him around this spot, and it also means I've just realized that one of my players that I had in like 7th, 8th, is not going to make this list because now things are getting too tight, and I'm interested to see where he disappeared off to.
I know where what one of my top 10 is not on this list already. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably one of mine isn't gonna make it either. I'm curious who actually ended up. I had Massa a bit lower, but
Oh,
after kind of thinking about it, I probably shouldn't have. I probably kind of underrated him, undervalued him a bit.
I think Massa played a great year this year, right? Like one of the biggest
Brendan even
reasons
had
that we'd
Massa on
have
his list.
I did have Massa on my list. I just checked. I had him at number 8.
Yeah, one of the biggest reasons you have Massa in this position is because of this year's performance. It's not just that he's been around for a while and been just a rock solid player for the Atlanta Reign. It's that he's had his best year when the competition was the hardest, and it was really helpful for the Atlanta Reign to get to that next level. I mean, it wasn't just him, obviously, but he elevated as the team elevated as well, and played the best Overwatch we've seen from him. The guy's also flexible, not a one trick. He captains the team. There's a lot of good stuff to be said about Massa.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree. I mean, I remember distinctly, I've got a memory of like 2019 of listening to a lot of the team's comms, which I don't think I'm allowed to say, but I'm going to say it anyway, that I was listening to the team's comms, and I was doing some insider trading and getting a ton of money off of it. No, it's a joke. But we were listening in on some of the comms as well, because we had access to it in the production room when we were listening in. And Massa struck me as somebody who was, I mean, the sole focus was a drive to win, even around a completely dysfunctional squad. Like he was wrangling just emotionally stunted individuals all over the place, and the drive to win just never stopped. And we saw it culminate in a peak of 2021, where the game has never been developed higher, which I put a ton of stock into. A lot of his accomplishments coming from 2021, but also just the fact that he's been sticking around and still kept at it despite everything that's been going on with him being on the Reign as a team. Yeah, very good player, very solid player in terms of his mechanics. Not the best that's ever done it, but definitely worth of the top 10.
Yep. I think he's I think also something that also gave points on this list for me was if you were a in-game leader as a main support player, but that applies to every role as we do that. Like if you're an in-game leader, you'll get extra points. It doesn't just apply to main support.
Mm-hmm.
So Moss got extra points for that, for being very vocal, a leader for a lot of his team. He got points because, yes, he's had one mad year in 2020, but he had his most recent performance was a great year. His 2019 was a good year, and his pre-Overwatch league was very good with Team Giganti. So he's had a very consistently good career. He has good hero pool, and he didn't have a great hero pool in 2020, but he improved it massively for 2021. And had a very solid performance across multiple heroes for 2021. And then also, on top of all these other factors, his mechanics, his overall mechanics are just very good. So he deserves, in my opinion, I had him around 7-ish, just because I didn't find him to be as consistent as some of the other players above him, just because of the 2020. But he deserved to be sort of in the
almost have had him
trying to
high
approach
then.
that mid pack.
The end of this list. Someone must have had him high at the end of this list. When we get to see all of them.
But he had to, because I didn't have him this high.
Jonathan may well have done.
Maybe Johnny.
Yeah, I think that's very possible. I also think it's interesting the spread of regions that have been represented so far as well. I think we've had FD got a Massa from Europe, and then we've had the rest coming from Korea, right? With Jexa, Slime. Damn it, I've forgotten somebody.
Well, my top 10 actually, since we've already passed it at this point,
and IDK, sorry.
I did have a Chinese player earlier than this, so yeah.
We're gonna see it. Don't worry. We're gonna get there. We're on
number 5.
See
the bastard spoiling shit.
We're getting through it. Number 5.
I'm not spoiling. I'm just giving a
number 5 on the list.
Drum roll, please.
It's Avast.
Big boy territory.
No.
Give it a
Y'all, there's my man.
What was there something wrong with my quotes, Kurt? Were they too long? Okay.
I had him
Mine
around
were not
here.
complete thoughts. Mine were essentially just blurbs.
Yeah, same with me. Yeah, I mean, I had Evil Villain because really just China's best main support, right? Throughout, I think, kind of the longevity of Overwatch 1. Outside of Overwatch League play, also strong play in World Cup.
Yep.
On the global scale as well. Just a really strong player. throughout. And I think Chengdu has actually been more competitive in Overwatch League than people have ever kind of like imagined, considering some of the the early kind of shenanigans with the Shanghai Dragons.
First person on the list as well that you can say is elite at Brig and Mercy rather than their focus being Lucio.
Lucio, yeah.
I mean, Eviltel is on this list, in my opinion, primarily because of his Brig and his Mercy play, and there's nothing wrong with that. The guy is insanely good at both of them. The movement is superb, and the impact that he's able to get from both in an aggressive manner, when obviously that's not usual, is fantastic. It's been at its peak as Chengdu has peaked, but he hasn't had to rely on his team being good in order to find success. He's also been good in other years, even when Chengdu was in the Chengdu zone. You could still tell that Eviltel was a top main support player. Maybe not like absolute tippity top in those previous years, but he was up there, and you could tell he had talent.
Yeah, I might have actually put him one spot. I actually had him exactly at 5.
And 6.
I agree with all the points you made, and I potentially would have had him one spot higher if not for one thing, because I do also take into account how they interact with their team, and like, because a big portion of just esports and team play in general, but also as a main sport player, is how you interact and mesh with your team. And he actually lost some points he would have gotten number 4 for me, except for the fact that there was some controversy this year because he was being like a hardcore diva, and they made Nisha have to play because of Eviltool's attitude in the locker room. And he lost points for that just because like he would have been probably 4 if not for the fact that he kind of hamstrung Chengdu some bits because of his own, and the fans all went ape shit because he wasn't playing, but it was actually him just being a diva. But he would have been 4 otherwise, if not for that for me.
Yeah, I completely agree with all these points. Yeah, I had Evital pretty high up. I can't remember where, but for similar reasons. I mean, the guy was just excelling in every kind of role which you would confine to the main support, and also was kind of paramount to the success of China as a region in the Overwatch World Cup, which I also considered like hugely important to that region as well, doing well in the Overwatch World Cup. A great player all around, so well deserved at number 5. Now we're getting into the meat and potatoes of the stew.
The big boys.
This is where you start to see the carbohydrates coming together. You know, the starch is starting to form a nice thick broth as we get into the top 4.
I just want to tell you guys, don't fuck me on this, okay? Don't.
What do you mean? Don't fuck you on this?
I mean,
I don't know.
If there's some dumb shit in the top 4, I'm gonna throw chairs around.
I may have
to see.
It depends though,
Me
because
and
we've all
Brent
got
are
different-
here, so there's clearly
I feel like
nothing
Brent is the one to
stupid.
throw the silly juice into the potion. Okay, if there's anyone that's throwing the silly juice here,
What
it's
could
gonna
we-
be Brent.
We've all got different thoughts and criteria of how we're measuring these players. Without further ado, number 4 of our top 10 main
Costa.
supports. Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Very
Okay,
solid.
sure.
Very solid.
Yeah. He didn't get a chance to play right away. I also think probably this year, obviously,
Number
not
4 is
being
Funny
able
Astro
to.
for our audio listeners.
Yeah.
I don't think I've been
this year
saying
not-
any of the names.
No. This year
At any
not being able
point.
to. Well, they'll understand. They'll
They'll
get it.
if they listen.
Yeah. I think he kind of got owned a little bit this year without being able to play a ton.
Yeah.
And then also, if you remember, at the beginning of his Overwatch League career, he was pretty much a bench player for Atlanta, right?
Well, originally, I think he actually served a competitive ban for boosting, didn't he?
He was under a competitive ban for
Oh,
boosting,
yeah.
so that's why he
Oh,
couldn't
yeah.
play.
So, like, he
Yeah.
was originally going to be involved in the league. I think Boston were
He
trying
was supposed to
sign
be
him,
Boston.
weren't
It was supposed to be Boston. They dropped him because of the ban, and then Atlanta picked him up under like Atlanta Academy, and then held him there until he was old enough to play with them. I believe.
Yeah, and then he was still benched for a while afterwards when
Right,
he joined the league.
yes.
So, like, the guy's had a myriad factors to halt his progression to excellency, and yet he still demonstrated how good he is.
Sorry, there's chaos in the house occurring.
No, it was there.
There's
Brent's
absolute
laughing
chaos
as
in the
he
house
worried.
occurring. Why it's moving copious amounts of furniture back and forth through the set as he's walked in. I mean, Funny Astro was high up on my list. The guy, even when he was playing in contenders, I feel like main support was one of those roles that scouting for the role was not particularly great. So even if you were an absolutely sublime player in main support, playing in contenders, it takes a while for you to get brought up into the kind of higher ecosystem. It's not something that most people have a keen eye for, I think, when it comes to like looking at talent. And the guy was just insane. Like
I did have him lower, I would say.
I can't remember
This
where
is
I had
exactly
him.
where I had him.
I can't remember
I
where
had him
am.
higher. I had him one spot higher.
Oh, really? See, I had him lower because obviously he didn't play a ton this past year. He was just that one season in Philly, but then even when they were in Philly, like they never won a stage or anything along those lines. But obviously,
they were first in the regular season.
Yeah, that's true.
They won the regular season. That's pretty good.
I mean, yeah, they won the matches that nobody gets paid to win. Yeah, I mean, they lost all the tournaments, but I mean, yeah, I took a little bit of points, I guess, away from that regard. I kind of valued the winning of the stages and stuff a little bit more.
I think he's had a tough career, honestly.
Yes,
He
it has
hasn't
not been
given
easy
all
for
of
him.
the opportunities to shine. But the biggest reason you have him this high up on the list is not necessarily because of his on-paper achievements. It's because when you look at him with your eyeballs, you can see, my God, this guy has talent.
Yeah.
And he's worked on his other heroes as well. He's not just a Lucio one trick. The guy's got other stuff that he can pull out as well. His tricks improved quite a lot. He's got a good flexibility. He was pulling out the Batiste and looking good at it as well. He's just a talented player. I think it would be a stretch, perhaps, at least when I was thinking about it, to push him into the top 3 because of those lack of on-paper achievements. But when I was weighing up, like, how much does somebody have to have actually achieved versus me thinking they're just elite? Funny Astro was top of the list in terms of elite players that haven't actually done or won too much on paper, because he's just so damn good.
Yeah, if I had done it more based off of his pure amount of achievements, he would be lower. But because I strongly believe, based off his play and how flexible his hero pool is currently, along with his attitude, I think his attitude's really good. I think that for me, it put him into the top 3 just because of all those multitude of factors. Though it's probably the most nebulous of all the other tops, just because of like the reality he hasn't played as much or won as much either.
If I would have went more on like just skill and just individual play, I would have had him way higher.
Josh, your player that you're saying don't fuck me here, that you really want in the top, have they shown up yet?
No. The player that
My
I was
player
saying was
hasn't.
not in my top 10 there's no chance he's in the top 3. So don't even worry about that.
Who
I'm
is
saying,
Okay, we'll see at the end. We'll see at the end. We'll see at the end.
Yeah, we'll see.
I'm
We'll
saying-
see. We'll see
I'm
him
just-
at the end.
I was thinking to myself the whole show, I was like, oh, well, these bottom picks, those are going to be the interesting ones. And now I'm getting to the top. I'm like, we're about to crown somebody the best main support of the entire history of Overwatch. And I don't know if these knuckleheads have gone with my pick. So now I'm getting anxious about it. Like, who the hell are we actually going to pick?
Yeah,
Alright,
I'm getting
roll
kind of
on.
anxious about some names.
Yeah,
too.
I'm
Number
curious.
3, top 10 main supports.
Yeah.
This is interesting. It's Toby.
Okay.
Okay.
Look at that
So-
Avast quote.
Mine
He
is
needed
even
to be on
longer.
the list.
Mine's
The
even
OG
longer than that.
Lucio
But yeah,
God.
I think Toby. I actually had Toby one spot lower. I had him at 4th and then Astro at 3rd. But he 100% deserved to be in the top 5. He did. He just did, because when you think about actual goats of like players that have been here from the beginning of time that have been in this game, it's Toby. It's just Toby. And it's also someone that's been here so long, but has remained consistently good throughout his entire career. He is the meme of he's eats other support players. It's just like he consumes them. It just happens. Everyone that's ever tried to play with Toby, he just beats them out. I mean, he just wins. He's like a slime. He just consumes them. And he always is so good. He's well-rounded. He's a role model, I think, to a lot of people, like a lot of Korean players in particular in the scene. They respect him really heavily, which is why even though I didn't necessarily like him becoming a head coach, he's the only player that could realistically make it work as a head coach going into next year, with no other coaching experience. So he's a top 5 candidate, number 4 on my list, and just literally just an OG in all respects. Like, if there is a GOAT status based off time in the game and main support, he's probably the pick.
but he was also able to adjust to every kind of like meta and style of like. Is he the where we talk about Funny Asher, right? And he'll like skilled he is like, is Toby that? No, but he's able to make his style of play work and lead through every single meta that's gone on. Really been a winner, kind of like everywhere he's went. And I think this is one case where you actually do kind of give him the win in terms of longevity, right? I mean, he's been literally here since the beginning, and still here. Obviously now going into coaching, but was still producing at a high level.
Right, and I think the other part to this too, hidden on Bren's point from the beginning of the episode, is that Toby was an innovator.
Yep.
In 2017, the Korean Lucios, I mean, prior to 2017, Lucio was not a character in this game. It was an AFK hero for people who wanted to call. It just wasn't even a playable hero. But after people like Toby really got their hands on it, and Toby's the number one name that comes to mind in terms of pushing the envelope when it comes to Lucio. Then other people were forced to try and mirror the impact that Toby was getting from Lucio. Otherwise, you would lose because you're like playing 5v6. The guy's having such a huge impact from a role that people thought was just a nothing role. And so he really did change the game when it came to Lucio. He's one of the He's the probably biggest innovator and dominated one of the years of the game, which was 2017. So I think that's incredibly impressive. And he's remained above average across all of the other years, even when comparing against tougher and tougher competition. Yiska actually picked him as number one, and I'm not mad about that, honestly, because I think if your criteria was heavily to do with time played and like you had to be relevant in a lot of the years that the game has been active, then Toby is your obvious choice.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. When I was thinking of the like players that innovated, like you said, Josh, Toby was the name that came to mind because, like you said, before that, no one was really thinking about it as a role where you could maximize value. Toby came along. Thankfully, Uncle Egg, brought the spotlight onto him. Your video, the famous YouTube video, translated
before me.
Huh?
Nobody was looking at Toby before me.
Yeah, I found shone a spotlight on his play, and I mean, the guy has remained consistent ever since.
There's going to be a viewer out there who believes that.
Has a hell of a legacy.
Stupid enough to believe that.
A hell of a legacy. And also, when I was talking about the wishy-washy category of people that you think of as like the figureheads of their roles, Toby was up there as one of those players for me, in my mind. Let's take a look at number 2 in our top 10 main support.
Gets serious.
Number 2 is Moth. Yeah, I am a huge fan of Moth. I'm a huge fan of Moth. This guy, I've always rated him super highly. I felt like, on the Gladiators when he was playing in 2021, I felt like 2021 was a bad year for main sports in general, people who were dedicated main sport players. Despite the fact that we did see Lucio being played and, a tremendous amount of Brig, it was still hard for a lot of those players, and Moth didn't really get used a lot. Gladiators decided to put a lot of their eggs in, Skewed and Shoe, which is understandable. They saw a lot of success with it. But despite all that, there's no one that is the 2-time back-to-back champ like Moth playing the role that he did. And the guy is just incredible. People think that, his Lucio is probably his best role. I think his Mercy is his best role. I think that that was one of the things as well that really separates him. Just the spatial awareness of this guy when he plays, incredibly high peaks. Not only was he doing it as well in the GOATS meta, but he carried it forwards, and he's been consistently good for pretty much all of his career.
This is where I had Moth on my list. I think, obviously, a tremendous leader, back-to-back champion. It's kind of hard to put him anywhere like almost lower than this. I do think when you kind of look at like the mechanical skill, there's definitely some players, and I think probably the player we have at number 1 definitely are above him. I think he kind of brings a lot to teams that you probably do not see. I think though the season for me kind of hurt a little bit for him. Didn't play a ton. We kind of thought he would really be the one that made the impact for the Gladiators to like push them through, when maybe he did behind the scenes, but in terms of play, wasn't that. And right now, what, he's not signed to a team, correct?
Not currently, as far
Going
as I'm
into
aware.
next year. Yeah, so it's like I think he had probably one of the obviously best runs that anybody's had, but a bit quiet since then. Where I think the person that I had at number 1, obviously not that scenario.
You just
Dude,
burp into
Phil,
the mic during this
you
long
actually-
fucking.
Jesus
You're just
Christ,
Look,
man.
if Josh can fucking echo the entire time, I get burp into the mic.
You are filth.
There's not equivalent. That's not even equivalent
Yeah, it is.
comparisons.
Mm-hmm.
So I also want to point out though that again, if you were doing things based on championships, if that was your criteria, then Moth just wins.
Yeah.
Right? Like the guy just wins. He's won 2 championships. He was playing Lucio, playing Mercy, elite at both of the roles. He's incredible. So I wouldn't be mad if you had Moth at number 1 either. I think he's got a good argument for it, depending on what your criteria was. It's unfortunate he didn't get an opportunity to showcase that this year playing for the Gladiators, because he wins another stage title, but barely played, to be honest. I mean, he played some, but he was mostly behind Skewed, which really hurts, even though Skewed was probably the best brig. I mean, either 1 or 2 in terms of brig play that we had in the league. So it's not too much of a downer being sat behind him. You just miss out on a year of your career to be able to show how good you are and compete for that kind of GOAT status. That's one of the things that you miss out on when you're sat on the bench, even against or behind incredibly good players. But he did dominate the game in 2019, 2020. I mean, he was a beast. Was he hands down the best in those years? There was arguments to be made for other people, like Slime, for example, or Funny Astro and other players yet to be mentioned too. But he's absolutely deserves his spot in the top 3. There could be no argument of him being outside the top 3, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think if he had more playtime this year, I would have potentially made the argument for number 1, depending on his performance. But he just didn't have any playtime, so you can't have someone that misses a year get number 1 in my spot. Essentially, you just can't have
doesn't
it.
play.
Yeah, but I don't even hold that so heavily against him, because he legitimately was benched by arguably the best Brigida in the whole league, was Skewed. So like, I'm not even mad about that performance necessarily, about being benched in that, because the thing is that people kind of forget his hero pool was still pretty decent. Like, not just his Brigida was still pretty decent, like pretty solid, and also he was one of the few main sport players that it's something that fell out of style pretty early on in Overwatch. Like, it didn't really happen until essentially after 2018 of Overwatch League. But you would occasionally play strats like on Hanamura, where your main sport would swap to like Ana or something like that. And he was one of the few main sport players that actually had enough competence to be on a flex support hero too, mechanically. Like, the only other person that came to mind where it was actually worth it was Toby. And the other thing that he shared with Toby, which is why he goes so up on this list alongside Toby, is he had arguably, in my opinion, the best play style you want out of a main sport player, in terms of you are extremely well balanced. You can make plays when you see plays available, but then you also know when to back up, when you're saving your speed boost, like when to play more passive and appeal for your team versus trying to make the play, as Josh continues to cough up lungs and then eat a hobnob off the camera. And it's something that was analyzed earlier that it hasn't really been analyzed recently, but back in, I think, like 2017-ish, someone did like a sort of an analytics review, by like a numbers review of like Toby's playstyle, which Moth pretty heavily mimics, of how balanced his aura usage was, how long he spent on speed versus swapping to heal, and then like when he swapped between those. And it just was like perfect. Like, it followed the tempo of a fight perfectly, and it got the max value after each swap. And that's sort of what Moth mimicked on Lucio, which is like extreme value and not feeding, and and finding the openings when you need to, while also having a very balanced hero pool. And the other reason he goes high up on the list is he's a caller, very strong calmer, and like an IGL sort, though he wasn't like necessarily a pure IGL for every team he's been on. But I do think that for that reason alone, he should be number 2, because he's just what I think is like him and Toby, the perfect playstyles of a Lucio player, but he's more well-rounded and with better mechanics.
All right. No arguments here. Number 1, the final undisputed top main support of Overwatch 1, without further ado,
Before I reveal this, I will say this player was almost unanimous among all of you.
Almost. Who didn't?
We'll find out after.
We'll find out after. Yeah. It's Lee Jae-gon. Yeah.
Yeah.
No doubts here. Sideshow's quote, elite level performance for 3 years, including a championship, and the highest individual peaks puts Lee Jae-gon
It's one of the
at
first
the
things
top.
we've ever gotten right on this show. In terms of ranking.
I would say so, but I will say too. I mean, again, Yiska did this and said that it was Toby, and a lot of the community thought that, well, I mean, that's a good idea, but probably should be Moth. You know, I don't think Lee Jae-gon is the community's choice, because I think a lot of the narratives around this guy are that he plays an overly risky style, because you see when he gets punished as well, because he does take risks, right? He goes for plays, he's flashy, and he gets massive value when it works. But he does occasionally, especially in that incredibly memorable game when they played against the Shock. I think it was in 2020. And he ended up dying a lot and got like focused Discord orb and ended up dying, didn't adjust too early. But to me, those are notable because they're the exception. Normally, this guy gets away with so much more than every other Lucio in the game. And his brig, people don't talk about his brig enough. It's enough to make me cream when I watch it. It's so good.
By the way, he's in his parents' kitchen saying this. But,
Yeah.
he's
I also think for me, like he really kind of defined like I think like players like him and Funny Astro have kind of like taken and even FD God, I think like what a main support should be and kind of like changed it moving forward for the game, right? Like the way these players play and how aggressive and mechanically skilled they are, like with when Overwatch is like 5v5 and like they say they kind of want it to be more like fast-paced shooter-ish. Like you imagine players like this are what people go for and how people excel playing that. So that's kind of where I view it as like he's really kind of obviously had success in Overwatch 1. I think really kind of set the bar pretty high for where main supports need to go in the future.
yeah.
This
the
guy-
man's a fucking menace.
He's a freak. I mean, I am one of the biggest Moth fanboys you'll ever see, but Lee Jae-gon, undisputed in my eyes, because not only he maintains all the qualities that I was looking for in this list: consistency, high peaks in terms of almost undisputed best main support player in their era that they played, which was 2021. But he did it in the era where we've seen the highest level of gameplay. I mean, that's pretty impressive. And he's securing championships. Came pretty close to it as well in previous years. The guy is a freak, and I think that when we look back at this as well, people see this feeding high risk, high reward playstyle. Previously, I mean, you need to look at every other main support player over the course of the history, and you see most people trend towards a safer playstyle. Lee Jae-gon doesn't, and this is what I mean by innovation. I think people will look back at this and think this was the next stage of where you would get value out of a character like Lucio. It's not just a passive value you're bringing by being in sync with the rest of your team. It's actively looking for opportunities to create magic out of thin air, stuff that can turn around team fights. And that balancing act where you're literally on a nice edge, where you can either be featured in a funny top 10 Reddit moment clip compilage where you're feeding your brains out, you're getting booped off the map because you've overextended, or you're just popping off, and you are creating these moments that normally is reserved for higher impact roles, quote unquote higher impact roles. We think about it like that, but I think this guy does it on multiple roles. He's got a championship, he's consistent, and he did it in one of the highest skill level eras that we know of, which is the 2021 year. I think the skill level of every other team that was playing has never been higher in the Overwatch League up until the year that we just witnessed.
And I think the playstyle difference is really important too, because I don't think Lee Jae-gon necessarily has a better playstyle than Moth. I think it comes down to what you're trying to, or how risky you want to play. So I think a good way of thinking about things when I watch them is that Moth tends to go for risks when not doing something would be even riskier. Like for example, if there's an enemy Widowmaker that's set up in a perfect position to kill all of his team, he will take the risk to go and challenge that enemy Widowmaker and shut them down, because just to leave them open would be in itself a losing gambit, right? Whereas Lee Jae-gon will go out and hunt for advantages rather than Moth is going to usually be trying to shut down opponents' advantages or their attempts at doing stuff. And I think there are pros and cons to both playstyles, but the way that Lee Jigon's been able to find that balance most of the time and also over push against bad opponents, that's not a bad thing to take the piss when your opponents can't punish you. If your opponents are bad and they can't figure out how to shut you down, you should be doing dumber and dumber shit to get more of an advantage because they can't punish you. And people look at that gameplay and they go, this is so brain dead, man. This guy should die. This guy shouldn't be able to get away with this. But he can, and he picks the moments most of the time to be able to get away with it too.
Yep.
Yeah, I think if Moth had, in my personal opinion, the lowest Lee Jigon could have gone for me was number 2. He was clearly the top 2 best main supports of Overwatch 1. But if Moth had a good year this year, I will say I would have had Moth above him, potentially, if he had a really good year.
Of course.
But he didn't play, so it's not fair. And Lee Jigon had an incredible performance in 2021, so it's just based off the evidence available to us. He has to be the best for the end because I can't empirically state, like, what if I go into the Bizarro universe where Moth played in 2021 and say he should have been the best. But yeah, he's really, really good, and he's insanely aggressive, and he gets value out of it. And also, so many times we talk about his Lucio, and like you said, Josh, his Brigitte was really, really good. He had a really good hero pool, actually, for what you want out of main support in Overwatch 1. And he was like just amazing at everything he does. And I think it's a different play style than what we've seen from like players like Moth or Toby, but it's one that has a lot of value still.
Okay. Now that that's out the way, it's time to take a dive.
That means Johnny may not have had him first.
Well, it's time to take a deep dive into the actual list and take a look at what everybody had in their top. I don't know if we're going to look at the top 15 or top 10.
I think we did top 15 for tiebreakers.
Let's take a look at them. Here's all of them. So this is the algorithm that you cooked up, Kurt. The points-based system.
Oh, Neptuno. I didn't have Neptuno on any of
I did not have Neptuno on mine either.
What are these picks?
I didn't have Closer. Who had Closer?
Why is Custa so far?
I had Custa in top 10.
What? You did not have Scott in top 10.
I did.
Fuck off.
I did.
That's atrocious, Matthew.
That's actually bad.
Well, once we started to talk about everybody else, I realized I made a mistake with that.
Should we go through everybody's
maybe.
list one at a time here?
Who had Closer?
I had Closer number 10.
Okay, I had Closer, towards the bottom in like 12th position or something. The dude was part of an incredible run pre-Owl, and then he's been playing at like a
Where's Big Goose at?
level in Owl.
Okay,
dude, I actually had Big Goose on my list. I had him.
I had Big Goose at 12th.
Yep.
I had Wiz as well.
He played 2 seasons of Overwatch League.
Here are I'd like to do it this way. I think we should each try and pitch someone that didn't make the top 10 and try and convince the others that they forgot about them.
Here, I'll go first since
mean?
they're close to the list. I'll go first since he's close to the list already, just from the algorithm. Closer should be number 10. And I'm going to tell you my reason why. He had a long career in the Overwatch League. He won the first season of Overwatch League, so he's a champion.
But
he was there? I mean,
he was. I know. He wasn't technically.
He was physically present, I guess,
at the time. But he
being
did win a
benched
championship.
won them the championship.
but he still had playtime during Overwatch Season 1 and during the first season, and before that, great run pre-Overwatch League Season 1, and I think every year after that, he actually had a very solid around. I think above average-ish performance on all of his heroes. No joke. I think he was extremely well-rounded player. I think he had a pretty average to above average performance in all the other years.
Above average might be stretching it a little, but average, I think
he got kind of I think if he had, I think he got scapegoated on, not scapegoated, but no, maybe scapegoated on the fuel actually. When they replaced him with Paintbrush, I think he far outperformed Paintbrush on the fuel. I think he was a good player on the fuel a year before, and I think he was a pretty solid player on Justice as well. I think he was an overall very solid. And to me, also, I rate consistency quite highly. And I rate him pretty consistently good across a variety of heroes. It's just he was never
better
amazing.
than Closer.
Shut your mouth.
I don't
Shut your
agree.
mouth.
No, that's not even close.
In the top 15.
Yeah.
No, how
Nah,
would I mean,
you guys, what are
trying
you
to get invited
talking
to a
about?
wedding?
How does Scott get to be in the top 50?
What do you mean? He
man?
got traded to the Valiant and he started to play good. Like Bren was saying, he started the Custom News Network.
No,
He's done nice things.
So here's what I was thinking.
No.
Here's what I'm thinking with this. I was trying to think about it, and I'm like, obviously, I'm weighing the eras of more recent Overwatch 1 gameplay higher because the skill level gets increased. People are learning off of previous years, playing at a high level. But it shouldn't take away from having very strong performances early on in the game's life cycle, which yes, Scott wasn't playing main support. He was playing mainly flex support early on as well. And he moved into main support. But I also took into account the fact that he was a charismatic leader in terms of the role, and he's one of those rare players that can act as a bit of a mediator, I imagine, as well within that team environment, which is, yeah, I think it's pretty rare. I mean, most Overwatch players don't know how to.
He was any good.
He wasn't good.
Year.
Better than Closer.
I mean, I think
No, he was not. No, he wasn't. No,
Closer's
he wasn't.
2017 was genuinely really good. Like, actually really good. Like, much better than Scott's 2017 or Scott's 2018.
Yeah, I didn't have. I didn't
And
have.
his 2019, because Scott.
I didn't have Closer on my list.
I didn't have him up high. I didn't have
Closer on my list. I had Scott in my top 10, but I regret it.
Okay,
So
I'd
you
like
guys
to.
want to go over each other's list real quick?
Yeah, let's go over the list.
Sorry,
Well, I wanna-
Josh,
sorry,
you're going to
I
say
wanna-
something.
I want to pitch somebody though. I want to pitch someone for real, because Closer. All right, I buy that. But Connor, you said consistency. I want to give you young Toby. His name is Animo, and 8 out of his 12 points came from me, motherfuckers. So you guys just didn't even put him on your list.
I
I
had
had him on my
Animo.
list. I had him in the top 15, but not
I had
in the
14th.
bottoms?
I had 14th.
I
this
think
guy was-
on it-
This guy was one of the best main supports of 2018 when it was mostly meta, sure. So does that count for much? Perhaps not. But he was sharing playtime with Ark and looked really good. Before Overwatch League as well, was actually doing incredibly. His career spans back to the very beginning of 2017, playing for Ardiont and Mighty AOD, like really competitive teams within the Korean scene, and then the Pacific team scene as well. The guy's got huge amounts of history, and he's still been average to above average in the seasons in which he played in the Overwatch League 2019, 2020, and 2021 as well. He's been able to maintain that kind of performance. He's a young Toby, and he's been robbed of his position.
Yeah, I'll accept that I was wrong in terms of the building of some of my early lists. My lists at the very bottom. I think you're putting up some fair points.
I don't agree with it because I think Animo is exceptionally low impact. I think he's an exceptionally low impact player. I think he is extremely consistent. No, he is consistent. He has like 0.8 deaths per 3 years, but he also does 10 damage every millennia. So like that's the problem I have with Animo, is that like I do think he's a very consistent player and he deserves a spot like in the mention of the top 15, but because he is essentially like the player version of Erosion, and you're dealing with a geologic timeline of impact with him, that it's I just can't have him top 10. That's the main thing that's the main argument I have against him. I do agree though, his hero pool is good. He has strong consistency, but he is just very, very low impact.
I tried to put Animo and Ark in the same spot to get 16 players in.
Okay. But can I try and push for somebody
Sure.
to be in the top 10? My argument. I had this player at 10th. And that player is Neptuno. As an individual, you guys are all scoffing at me here, but here's my argument. Here's what I wrote down in my notes. One of the most experienced main supports of all time. They've been around a long, storied career from top to bottom, playing as up to a very recent degree. Ups and downs.
Good night, father.
What did you just say?
He said goodnight to his dad.
Okay.
Said in a very creepy way, though.
Yeah, that was very weird. Here's the thing. Made the OWL finals in 2018 on a team, right? Playing that role as well around the time. Again, not playing the best main support in the world, but at least being part of that team and bringing with it the experience that comes with the fact that he is one of the, when he was competing, one of the oldest players as well in the Overwatch League. That comes with a certain level of emotional maturity in terms of being on that roster, which you can not build around, but it's good to have. There's teams that fall apart with copious amounts of talent because they don't have that kind of rock and foundation. But also, it's the fact that he stuck around. It wasn't just that 2018 was a blip on the radar. He showed high levels of performance. I believe was it 2020 in the Summer Showdown where Philly won.
He had in 2020 he was actually that was with Charge, and he went to they
Wait,
won.
what the
it
fuck
was
am
with
I
Charge.
talking about?
In
Well, I
2019, he also had in 2019 he had the stage 1 playoffs with Philly as well.
But
Okay,
He
well,
finished
I'm
that
capping then.
in like
No, he did
fourth
win
or
summer.
whatever.
He won Summer Showdown in 2020. The
With
Golden
Charge.
won the
Yeah, with
Apex
Charge.
Summer Showdown. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
it
yeah.
was in 2020 he won that.
You scared me for a bit. You have him at number 9.
Oh, I do have him at number
but
9.
yeah.
Sorry, because of my number system.
Yeah, I was worried that I screwed everything up.
No,
but yeah,
sorry.
you have him number 9.
I'm just looking at the
Did
side.
you start
of
at
the-
0 or something?
No, it's
Or
just the
what?
way he formatted his.
I had like
thing.
at the top. I had it doesn't matter. I didn't put the numbers next to it. I used the rows basically.
Can we take a look at his entire list? Can
Let's
you
just see
leave
Bryn's
it?
list. Let's just see
So
Bryn's
there's
list.
some names that I would push much lower.
Slime at number 3.
I had
Yeah.
Slime at 3 as well. I
Yeah,
had
Slime at
Slime in 3rd as well.
Dude, did we even watch the same game in the past 2 years?
I quite like my top 10 list. I would keep.
Yeah.
But you only,
no,
I mean,
no.
did you only remember his play from 2019? You just
I
didn't
mean,
really
also
play
you
very
have
much.
Custa in the top 15. You have wins. You have wins in the top 15.
I have
Yeah.
wins as well.
Oh my Christ!
I
The
have
man
wins
didn't
because-
play the game.
Because
I
I'm
have Costa
considering
in my
I'm
top
considering
10.
legacy. I'm considering legacy.
Didn't
Yeah.
play in Overwatch League.
Yeah, I know, but
And
I'm
even
still
when he
considering.
played outside of it, he
What
just
am I
sat on
supposed to
the
just
court.
erase 2016, 2017?
Yeah.
He didn't play. I mean, like he was just sitting on the cart. He
Yeah,
sat
I
on
know,
the
but
cart
listen,
all year.
he didn't
Ian
have.
Bren looked at impact.
He didn't
Impact
have
on
impact, but I'm
Overwatch
looking. I'm
as a
thinking
whole.
about. I'm thinking about legacy of these players as main support players at the time that people were looking at as part of winning rosters. They were on it. Yet, yes, with hindsight, I would be dragging probably the bottom 5. I take them off, and I put in other players. But my top 10, I'm pretty confident in my top 10. I would lock in my top 10. I think Neptuno deserves a
I
spot.
wouldn't.
Just because of that consistency, the fact that he has been on a winning roster, he's made finals in the Overwatch League as well, and he's actually won a title, which was in 2020, and he leaked a bunch of shit with Josh.
That's just like
That's true, but
Not
that shouldn't
even.
get you on the
We're,
list,
we're
man.
not giving the Edward Snowden Award to the main supports. we're not. That's not like we're not getting anything like that. I feel like so.
The problem
I
with your
think it's
list,
a-
though, Bren, your top 10 seems reasonable if you just forget that FD God and people
Yeah.
like Animal.
Where's
in my
everyone else?
opinion,
You didn't have
exist.
FD got at all?
He
Because-
doesn't have everything. Not even on the list.
Because when I was
You
when I
have
was compiling
on above FD
when I was
God?
compiling my players, I was looking at players who had performed at a very high level in multiple premier level events, like premium level Overwatch events in the given time frame. And so FD God performed well in 2020. Was it 2020 or 20? It was 2020.
Yes,
When-
2020.
yeah, when he was on the Paris. And which one did they win?
Look.
June Joust?
No, they won the Summer Showdown.
They won Summer Showdown in 2020 with Charge.
Yes, they
That's what he
did.
won.
Yeah, you're right.
That's
Summer
the one
Showdown.
title he has.
And
Paris, yeah.
I
think-
thought, listen, I thought I was taking into account the winning aspect of it. FD God did win the one thing, but then also kind of 2021 was not kind on main support players in general. Very high level play. With the power of hindsight, I accept that I'm wrong.
My list, I have the right players. I just may not have the right order, I think.
You've got Custa on your
You
list.
have
and
Custa. You have Custa way too fucking high. Let me see Matt's list.
Number 9!
Fuck off. Fuck off.
You
Fuck
got
off.
wins above Animal.
I mean, I can't. This is unreal. This is simply. And Slime 3 again, which hurts me. And then wins. Wins again makes it on the list. Stop putting wins on the list. Why is wins on the list? It should.
All right. If I could redo my list, I actually would still keep Slime at 3. I think I would bump Toby and Eveltal. I would bump Toby to 4th. I'd bump Eveltal to 5th. I'd put Jixay 6th. I'd then put
This is so interesting.
I then put Funny Astro probably above FD God. I would drop
Bro,
Custom,
no
move
one's
Masa
keeping
up, and then move IDK up, but then I'd be good.
Dude, you
Okay.
just list off the whole list and you expect
And
to remember it.
I'd have Custa like 12th, where
Bro,
Big Goose
how
is.
on earth did Custer get into your 9th position on your list? It's just disgusting.
Yeah, that's I don't.
Because I wasn't that
understand
impressed with some of the people
how-
underneath him. But
I
then
need to
Moss
check.
is way
no
better.
way
so
on planet
I should
Earth
have
that
put.
Custa gets in over people like I have to look at the list again. I'm going blind. I'm going rage blind. I'm just
What's
going
wrong
rage
with
blind.
Slime third?
So
Okay.
much. So much.
He only played an elite level for one season, man. For
Yeah.
Who is
one.
this?
I mean, you can argue that he played before that when he was playing with Runaway, sure. So he has more than a whole year, which is why he's on the list at all, right? Because he's got like a
Yes.
year
Yep.
and a half. But he can't be at number 3. He can't be
Three?
above
Oh,
Toby. What?
Can it be? I mean, he can't even. I mean, above Funny Astro is wild. Is for some of the like.
I'm a little bit confused. Not at this list or anything, but I thought I've already received the delivery, but I just received a text saying that they're coming in 15 minutes to deliver something again to my house.
So Kurt, here
Do I need to go?
let me remake some of my lists here. So where Jexay
No,
is,
no.
we should put
No.
Toby,
No,
and
no,
then where
we
Toby
have
is
we have to
We're
we have to
not
wrap this because
changing the
I don't know
list. We
what the
have to
hell's
move
going
Evil
on.
Tall.
We have to move forward.
Let's
We have
look
to
at
move
everybody
forward.
else's
Yeah,
list.
let's look at
Look at
everybody
Sideshow's
else's.
list.
So Josh,
Okay.
you had honestly all pretty
I think this is
reasonable.
quite acceptable.
A pretty
I think
good list.
Coma is an interesting pick. I think
Mm,
Coma is the most
yeah.
interesting of those picks.
So Coma doesn't have a like thorough history. He hasn't played every single tournament of the entire history of Overwatch, but he has a long history. Goes back to playing for Runaway in like 2016, 17. I can't quite remember. Then he was playing for Kongdu Panthera. Then he's played, obviously, when they won the stage title with the Shanghai Dragons, when it was Coma and Luffy playing on that team. So, like, I feel like he's somebody that definitely slips under the radar, but actually has a pretty decent history of playing for top-level teams and looking great while doing it, too. The reason I had him at 11th is because he didn't really play all the time across the whole history.
No.
There's large chunks where he just goes missing and was playing, I don't know.
Also, he only
where
had
is he
1
now?
year at
I don't
top
know.
level competition in 2019. He only played really Overwatch League 1 year in 2019.
Well, Overwatch League, yes, but when he was playing before 2018, he was still playing at top level.
yeah, but if you
competition.
compare that to players like Big Goose or even IDK and Closer and Nisha and such like that, I feel like all of them have probably more across their careers in Overwatch League success-wise than Coma does. I think
Longer
Coma has
period of
one pretty
time,
good
yeah.
year, but
Yeah, but also I think Homer's had some pretty high peaks, is what I would argue.
that's
I
fair.
I quite like him anyway. I think one of the names that I actually missed off here, honestly, and nobody mentioned, I was looking at Nisha, but couldn't really rate him that highly. I thought it was.
I have Nisha in my top 10.
Yeah, but he had 1 year and he was mixing playtime with somebody else who's higher on the list. But I was also thinking skewed too. The problem is, like, is he a flex support? Is he a main support? I don't even know where to rank him.
Yeah,
He only had
it's,
one
I
year, but
actually
he
had him
was
in my top
damn
15
good.
because of that, but
Have
I
we
don't
looked
know
at Johnny's?
where.
No.
We haven't looked at Johnny's yet. No. Wait, something I want to talk about though, since he's not on anyone else's list, is Linksa. I want to talk Linksa. He made my top 15, even though he hasn't played the Overwatch League. But I think this upcoming year, I am feeling very certain that he will be in the league, and I think he's going to be up there for the potentially the best Chinese main support / tied with Evil Tool in the coming year. I think his performance in contenders is nuts. He's had an incredible amount of interest from a lot of teams in Overwatch League. His flexibility is crazy. His mechanics are insane. I think this guy is going to be someone to watch out for in the coming year. And then the rest of it, I had skewed on there just because his Brigida performance was so singularly good.
Yeah,
that
makes
I was
sense.
like, we should put him. But I don't think he was technically, even though he sort of played as a flex support before that, he was a DPS player. So I'm like, I don't really know where to put Hit, but I was just like, screw it. I'm going to put him on the list just because his Brigida performance was so good.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, what's going on here?
This
See,
is
I'm
Johnny's
on
list.
number one.
Moth at number 1. I'm not upset at, to be honest.
Wow.
Neptuno at 5.
Neptuno. Wait.
You guys made fun of me for putting Custa in the
He
top
has
fun of me
10.
for-
Neptuno
for
as the
wanting to-
fifth best Overwatch.
I was punching for
main
Neptuno
support.
to be higher as well. And
Neptuno
you know,
wasn't even on my
Arc in
list.
12th too. He's got Arc in 12th. He's got
Evil
I
Tom
mean,
11th?
dude, this man loves Mercy players. I
No
don't know
wonder
what's
why
going
he
on.
didn't show up. He didn't want to have to defend this.
This is indefensible. This is I don't even know how you could defend.
At least
Neptuno.
Bren and I are here to defend
Masa,
our stupidness.
Masa is like, okay, I can at least see Masa being pretty, but IDK is 6 as well. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah.
He's over
Custom
Astro and
14?
Jixa and Eviltool.
If Eviltool was swapped with Neptuno, it would start to make more sense.
Oh,
But
this,
it just
Jonathan
this
is off the fucking coop. He's off
I
the
don't.
fucking coop.
So even when I'm trying to sell Neptuno, he just hasn't had successful enough years after 2018 or before 2018. Even it
Yeah.
wasn't like he was an incredible player pre-Owl.
Does Johnny
He
owe
doesn't
him
have-
money?
No, I don't know. I mean, Johnny, that's fucking
he
crazy.
was winning in before 2018.
What do you mean he was winning?
I think
What-
it was
what
very
he
minor
winning?
stuff, but he was winning.
Check his pre.
Winning what?
Just
I mean, he played.
Minor
I
I mean,
mean,
he
he
was
was winning little
2016
stuff.
so
I mean,
he had
you remember at the
2016 World
time-
Cup where he lost to Finland.
The
yeah, I mean, he
quote-
was playing like ESL Go 4 cups and winning those.
I think his
but
one
are we really
victory
rating those in the
pre-Overwatch
greatest
league
of?
was he
we're-
won the
we're doing-
European Pit Championship. In
Yeah, we're doing a
2017.
greatest of all time record.
Yeah,
and
I don't
you're
know.
wanting us to rate
Fifth?
the Pit monthly championship from 2017.
If I could interject here, the quote that Johnny gave for Neptuno at number 5 was a veteran with iconic aggression and leadership. Successful wherever,
Iconic.
successful wherever he goes. That
Oh, I'm gonna
He knows he was on the Guangzhou charge, right?
lose it, dude. Also,
Guangzhou
I'm gonna put out
Charge,
something
though,
else
did
too.
have an
I
alright
think you could have
year.
put like
The year that he
I
played,
think
he
his
may have
play
been
was
alright that
in
year.
2018 wasn't even that amazing. I'm gonna say it. I don't think his play in 2018 was even that amazing. I think he played a suboptimal Mercy play style in 2018.
He
There were
found
times,
value.
yeah, but actually
he found
his
a lot of value on a character that just wasn't.
I think it was suboptimal value. I think you could have replaced him just like if he had just damage boosted / healed his teams during those really cool Mercy clips, he probably would have done more value than pissing people.
Where did Johnny have wins?
Yeah, he didn't have wins though.
I thought you were circling
Yeah.
dicks.
Also,
So
Custa
the-
making
Custa.
top 15 again is crazy to me. Like I can at least see Arc because Arc's performance on Mercy was so singularly good at times. But like, I don't
Honest
know,
to God,
man.
guys, I'm looking at how high Neptuno and Custa
That's
are on this
crazy.
list.
That just
It's
feels like a friends list.
incredible that we had a decent top 10. I
What do you
think our top
mean?
10 is decent.
the
I
high
think
the high
we-
top is easy.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's clear, apparently it wasn't. Neptuno was 5. Apparently it wasn't that easy.
That is absurd.
But
Absolutely
this is what I mean.
absurd.
Like Johnny, I mean, we all have different methods of working out our top tens in terms of what we weigh highly and what we appreciate in players that are on this list. Johnny,
Can we
sees-
agree?
Mhm.
Sorry, can we agree when we do the next episode? If Jonathan's here, let's say we're doing main tank. I can't remember what the next one is. We just spend the first 5 minutes of it getting Jonathan to defend.
Yeah.
Oh, there's
Maybe
whatever
he's
way you could
Crazy
defend
convinced
this.
shit he has.
well, maybe he's just a really big fan of Neptuno's like Counter-Strike play back in 2004. in the
Yeah, maybe you
Spanish
should
league.
add
actually-
into account his Counter-Strike play.
I really want to know as a final like list examination thing for both of you. This is a cross examination for Bryn and Mr.X.
Yeah.
Why is wins in the top 15 on both your lists? I need to know.
He was part of a winning roster that was winning at a time when.
Oh,
It was the early
I
days.
got a perfect stage.
Okay,
Where's
I'm gonna be
mine?
real with you. I'm gonna be real with you. Like I said, I'm completely willing to my entire top section, bottom section of the list. I'm just gonna take them out, and I would replace them with a lot of the names that you guys are bringing up. IDK, for example, FD God, names that should be on my list. But what I was looking at was I was going back in time. I was looking at the Premier tournaments. I was looking at who was the winning teams at the time. Who were the teams that were performing at a very high level. And when I was going through that, those players slipped past my grasp when I was looking at some of the top players. It's just when I was looking at 2019 as an era, I was only looking at Moth and Slime really as the players. Those are the ones that stuck out of my head. 2020. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I can't defend myself. I was wrong.
That's fair. Let's hear Matt.
I had the right players. I think just the wrong order.
No, you're fucking dumb.
I
have to go.
One.
So
I think I did.
I have to
It's
go.
not like I had wins, but I didn't have IDK or FD God.
Matt, shut up so that Brent can close
Brent
the
has to
episode.
go. Brent, you
I
want
have
to
to go.
close the episode, Brent?
I have to
Close
go.
the episode.
I don't know what the hell's going on. but
Fans.
Thanks for watching the episode, everybody. It's a little special episode of top 10 main supports. I hope you enjoyed our discussion and our picks and our end result list for the top main supports of Overwatch 1.
Johnny's list is some fucking goop.
I don't know what the next role we're doing is, but
It's
I
gotta
mean,
be flex support, right?
it's going to be something similar.
Just
Yeah, I
makes-
think it might be
Makes
flexible.
more
I'm
sense.
not too sure. Make sure you leave a comment as well. I know I told you at the beginning as well, but everybody, let's wish Mr. Larson that he gets better soon as well, because he couldn't be on this episode because he was sick. I would love to have had him on the episode just to find out what the justification was
I
for
would've
Neptuno
loved
in
it.
top 5. It's
It would have been
I would've
great to have Johnny here.
yeah. Subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. Follow the Twitter and all that good business. I'm going to try and keep the content going within this drought. We really are. We're essentially the pioneers. We're digging wells within the desert. We're really digging deep for the content during this off season.
We're essentially water divination people. We're walking around with sticks just looking for the clout in
divining
the
rods.
desert.
It's tough. It's hard.
Using divining rods to try and figure out where the hell the content is.
Hard out here. It's arduous. But yeah, thank you for watching, everybody, and we will see you next time. Peace.